I am just thrilled to have with me two remarkable, accomplished, and beautiful women who are joining me here at the Grand Rally for Music Education, world-renowned soprano Renee Fleming, and equally renowned music researcher Dr. Nina Kraus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Something our audience is always interested in, because we care so much about music education, is your own very personal, I like to call it the music education origin story, going back to those early influences that created you, your desire to be on the path that's taking you to this time in your life. Renee, we'd love to hear from you at the beginning, the musical beginnings of your life, your influences, the teachers, and what set you on this remarkable journey to your artistry today?
Sure. Well, I am actually the poster child for music education because because both of my parents were high school vocal music teachers, and I had education from them every day. I thought everybody sang all the time and wrote music and played music and improvised. And then I had a terrific K through 12 education with very enriched, especially middle school and high school education, really extraordinary musicals the whole time. I learned how to play guitar in a guitar class, and each one of these experiences had a major influence on me as a musician, as an artist, and as a human being. And then I went to the State University of New York in Potsdam, which has a renowned school of music called Crane. And I went to the Eastman School of Music. I went to Juilliard, and I had a Fulbright scholarship and studied in Germany. So I had a spectacular education. And of course, all of it having to do with learning about music and learning how to perform, learning about singing in my voice. Very lucky.
But you had a phenomenal bass, right? I mean, when you ended up being a soprano, a little pun intended there, but you had your base of musicianship was just part of your education. Right.
And it's interesting because when I hear young singers, even in an audition setting, I almost always know who's had that because their pitch is great. Their musicianship is great. They have imagination. And all of these things really point to artistry. There are great singers who haven't had that background and who just have extraordinary voices and can kind of wrestle them into shape. But having that bass also has enabled me to sing a lot of new music because your musicianship skills are on such a higher level. Mm-hmm. So I'm really grateful for it.
And the connection to Crane is so wonderful because we have a real strong connection to the Crane School of Music. I actually was an executive in residence there at the School of Music a little while back, and so many of the students come to the NAMM show as part of our Gen Next program. So another connection. Nina Kraus, you took a scientific path in this world, but we know that you have a strong musical journey as well. What's your origin story?
Yeah, well, I luckily grew up with a mommy who played the piano, and I loved to just live underneath the piano whenever I could. And I grew up in a house where more than one language was spoken. And one of the languages I learned was harmony. And, it occurs to me, it's this unique, Renee, you'll of course have experienced this so much, this simultaneousness of hearing yourself and your partner, and you're adjusting your motor self based on what you're hearing. And it's a marriage, a sensitivity to the other person and the space between you. And to me, that's really emblematic of what sound is. Sound connects us to each other and to the world. But so, I guess I must have thought that sound was important deeply. I went to college and majored in comparative literature and then took biology, and discovered that I loved that and was able to make some connections with the biological foundations of language, which excited me. And then when I decided to go to graduate school and to study the biology of sound processing in the brain, I was looking at single neuron activity in response to sound and seeing how that changed during learning. So I also learned that music is the best example of auditory learning, because the hearing brain is vast and it consists of our motor system, how we think and feel and move. And music is just a wonderful way of studying learning. And then I guess along the way, I have learned to play some instruments, not especially well, but with tremendous joy. And so really, I've just been studying that there's so many topics of our lives that fit under the umbrella of sound in the brain.
So this remarkable alchemy has come together with Renee Fleming, an artist we all travel miles and miles and hours to hear when we can, and a scientific pursuit. And you've joined together with some very interesting initiatives. First of all, how did that happen, and what are you doing together?
Well, we met actually at a conference table at the National Institutes of Health because I had the extraordinary good fortune to meet Francis Collins. Dr. Collins runs the National Institutes of Health at a dinner party. And I had just been appointed as a consultant to the Kennedy Center. And I asked him about all this research I kept reading about, the scientists looking at music in the brain. And I said, why is that? And I didn't realize that he was such a fabulous amateur musician himself and a triple threat composer, player of multiple instruments and singer. And he, we started this conversation about the two institutes really coming together and amplifying the work of science and providing a platform for the work of science. And that has just taken off like a house on fire. It's been amazing. And Nina was really one of the first scientists who was brought to the NIH to kind of give a presentation on her work so that the NIH could kind of get a grasp of the whole field at large. And this has led to them giving $20 million in funding to this intersection of neuroscience and the brain in particular, and the arts, which is so exciting. And it's taken off in so many other directions as well, with the NEA funding now a resource center, and they've chosen UCSF to kind of put together this sound health initiative, which is, I think it's premiering this week or next week. And then I'm also involved with a NeuroArts Blueprint, which is Johns Hopkins and Aspen Institute organization. This is they're trying very ambitiously to create a whole new field that's beyond music. It goes all the way to the humanities, to architecture, to everything that's about neuroaesthetics and our ability to process beauty and feeling and emotion through our senses. So it's all been incredibly exciting for me. And wherever I perform now, I give a presentation and invite scientists to join me, and connecting performing arts venues and organizations with their local healthcare providers and researchers. And I can tell you, audiences are fascinated and they want more and more and more. So Nina and I keep trying to dream up things to do together, certainly in Chicago when I'm there. And again, where the audiences are just loving it.
I think you're telling us too, the audiences are hungry for it, right? There's a certain sensibility that you're helping them understand. What a beautiful synergy or alchemy that's occurred between the two of you. And I love that you're taking this to the world in the same way you are with your artistry. But Nina, I'd love you to take us in a deeper dive about what, and we've been so honored to fund some of this work through the NAMM Foundation. It's been such a vital collaboration with us. What is science telling us about why music is so important in our lives developmentally, and also why Renee is having some of the experience she's having with her audiences when she brings these two worlds together. We'd love you to hear a little bit about your current perspectives.
Well, Mary, let me take your question in two directions. I'd like to talk about rhythm, and then I would like to talk about something that Renee kind of touched on, is what music can tell us about ourselves. So first with rhythm, rhythm is pervasive outside of music. It's in our heartbeat. We walk. Our very breathing is rhythmic. And there are rhythms in the brain. And so that's where I come in. And it is a real challenge and to bring together how is it that the rhythms in the brain sync up with the external rhythms and sound. Then there are rhythms within rhythms. So in music, we have the beat, which is signified by the time signature, and that gives us what to pay attention to. It lets us predict. It gives us confidence. And then there is the pattern. And the rhythmic patterns are signified by the rests and by the note durations. And so speech, too, has rhythms, and they occur across these different time scales. And the way the brain makes sense of the beats and the patterns is, what enables us to communicate with each other, what enables us to hear ourselves or hear each other, especially in crowded places. And rhythm therapies work, I think, from a physical and neurologic standpoint, because our brains likewise work on these different time scales of rhythms, the rhythm patterns and the underlying beats, and making music strengthens this fundamental infrastructure. Now in my lab, we are looking at rhythm with children and language and their development, and it's my expectation that we will be using brain rhythms to predict more and more what child is going to have difficulty learning to read or with other language skills. And we can use rhythms in the brain to monitor treatment options. The other area that we were taking rhythm is with head injury and concussion, because it turns out that if you get hit in the head, you can disrupt some of the brain rhythms that sync up with sound. And we want to take this a step further, which is also to use rhythm as a therapy for athletes to help ameliorate some of the cognitive symptoms that accompany a concussion. So now let me just say, what can music tell us about ourselves? And I think that now we're in a position where we can start asking some of the questions that are as much in the wheelhouse of philosophers as of biologists. And Renee, you mentioned beauty, consciousness, the nature of self, deep questions about the nature of spirituality, mind, body, brain, and music, I really believe can help probe some of these big questions. And let me just illustrate with two examples. One is memory. Music and memory are very tightly linked. And, even before we wrote history down, history was carried forward by the bards. Most of us learned our alphabet through the ABC song. And then if you look at people with who have real severe memory loss with dementia and no longer recognize their loved ones, hearing music that was part of the soundtrack of their lives can bring them back into the world, even if only fleetingly. But doesn't this tell us music tells us who we are? The other example is has to do with physical and mental healing. And Ted Gioia wrote a book called Healing Songs, and he talks about an order of Benedictine monks who were kept from chanting for a while. And when they stopped chanting, they became tired and listless and bodily ill. Their disease rates skyrocketed. And it was only after they reinstated the chanting that their physical health returned. So with music reaching in so many realms, corporally and intellectually, I think that it can provide a holistic probe into unanswered questions in biological science and philosophy, What would this look like? I don't know, but having this initiative with the NIH Sound Health Initiative and with the NEA, with NAMM, making this now possible. I mean, take it. I'm a scientist who, for many years, music was never something that was in the fit under the umbrella of sound in the brain as a conventional auditory neuroscientist, but now it does. And I think that it opens up a whole new world. And with these initiatives, I think we can begin, first of all, to ask some of these questions and then to begin to answer them.
It's so interesting to me, Nina, that you talk about that, because one of the things I had to learn right away, because there are things that we take for granted as musicians. We know that music is healing because we have people who come backstage who said, your music got me through this loss or this illness or this tragedy in my life. And they don't ever forget that. And it's a very powerful force for people. And it's not necessarily me. It can be anything. It's whatever you love. But getting science to pay attention to it requires a level of data gathering and a level of really, I call it sort of a mosaic, from the lowest level of this. That was the first thing I learned. It's like, my goodness, the actual research is so micro managed, and it has to be built up over a long period of time before science will unequivocally say this is powerful and it works. But they're starting to. It's happening.
Yeah, and I mean, I can really tell you that I have seen firsthand how making music changes the brain. It changes sound processing in the brain in ways that strengthen language and our ability to think. Sound, of course, consists of pitch and timing and timbre. These ingredients are in music and in language. So when we measure brain responses in children who are engaged in a music education, we see that the way they process these sound ingredients is more precise, it's strengthened, it's purer. And we've also found that music is a powerful way to overcome deficits in sound processing that come along with economic disadvantage often. Making music really affects who we are biologically and how we engage with the world.
It's beautiful to hear you both speak about this, because you've arrived on kind of separate journeys, which are now parallel and are overlapping, from the perspective of beauty and artistry and the art of science, being a very engaged scientist. But you're both, we say, unequivocally, the power of music exists and has these results and impacts. And I think when we all can say this definitively and being able to describe it through our various means, we can create the world we're all hoping for as we move forward. I could talk about this all day, and maybe someday we will. We'll have to find our way to a conference, or we'll have to create a conference. We should make that but I'd like to sort of end with a series of sort of quick questions, all right? In a little bit of a quick round robin format. So Renee, to you, if there is a concert venue you're dying to return to, which one is it? Where is it?
Oh my gosh. Any of them, any and all. I have been out of work now for almost a year, and I think it's going to be a long time still, because I'm committed to not really getting on planes and certainly flying internationally until I have the vaccine. So I'd be so grateful to perform anywhere. Now, I did have one performance at the Kennedy Center in July with Vanessa Williams, which was a lot of fun, really great fun. I can't tell you, it's a whole different feeling to perform when you've taken it for granted for your whole adult life, and then it's taken away.
Yeah, well, we can't wait either. Nina, where do you hope to return to in terms of being an audience member?
Well, I would like to hear Monteverdi's Vespers in a cathedral.
Anywhere in the world, maybe, right?
Anywhere.
Right.
but actually one of my sons is in Cambridge in the UK, so they have a pretty nice cathedral over there.
I would
Let's go.
say.
Let's go.
Yeah.
One of the things that I look forward to is seeing my children and singing songs with them. And to Renee's point, I look forward to talking about science and the brain and sound to a live audience.
Right. And my final question are, what are you most hopeful for 2021? Renee?
Oh my gosh, everything has to get better, please. Please. I live close to DC. I biked to the Capitol 2 days ago to see for myself. And I'm most hopeful for some semblance of unity in the country, the breaking down of this terrible division that is mostly caused by people's access to their own track, whatever track that they most appreciate, and which then, of course, they imagine that everyone else is on the same track, and we're not. So we need to center, and we need to find and decide what truth is. So that is absolutely the thing. And of course, I'm also very hopeful that these vaccines will be distributed much more quickly so that we can safely return to our lives.
Nina, what are you most hopeful for?
Yeah. So Renee, truth with a capital T. As kids go back to school and we get the opportunity to rethink our health care, I'm hopeful that we will move towards a society which makes music an integral part of education and medicine.
To both of you.
I have a 1-year-old grandson now, and to watch him respond to music in the last year has been the most powerful validation of everything I've learned with these projects, because it is such a strong reaction. The minute a beat comes on, he is full of joy and he is dancing.
Yeah.
It takes 1 second for him to respond, and nobody taught him that.
Yeah. And as you are, who you came into the world, you were fortunate to have music around you. I mean, we are, and like I see this as a biologist, we are what we do. Biologically, we are what we do, and in terms of being hopeful, we have to. I'm hopeful that we will make good decisions for how we personally spend our time, how our children, our grandchildren spend their time, and how our society spends its time. And music is such a huge part of what makes us biologically who we are.
And performers learn to empathy. Empathy is a huge part of the arts and what it is that we learn from both reading, doing plays. It's also part of history, because all of the arts really show us what it's been to be human over millennia, and certainly over the last, in modern history, 400 or 500 years. And that teaches us really, it gives us a perspective, I think, that's incredibly useful.
I'm so grateful to both of you. You both give me so much hope for 2021 and beyond. And I hope we have many more opportunities to work together. So thank you so very much. And thank you for being part of our Grand Rally and making sure music education is strong in the lives of all of our children and in all people. Thank you so much.
You're here. Thank you, Mary.
Mary, thank you for what you do.
Yes.
Thank you.